It started with a sound. Not a crash, not a bang, just a faint, rhythmic tapping at my bedroom window. At first I thought it was the wind, maybe a tree branch swaying against the glass. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something. I lived on the third floor. There were no trees near my window. I froze, my heartbeat thrumming in my ears. The tapping continued, deliberate and steady. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, a half-dream conjured from the fringes of sleep. But no matter how tightly I squeezed my eyes shut, the sound persisted. Tap, tap, tap. I couldn't take it anymore. My curiosity, a trait that had often betrayed me, got the better of me. I slid out from under the covers, the cold air biting at my skin, and approached the window. The blinds were drawn, the room cloaked in shadow. My hand hesitated on the cord for a moment before I yanked it, flooding the room with pale moonlight. There was nothing there. Just my reflection, wide-eyed and pale, staring back at me. The tapping had stopped. I stood there, my breath fogging the glass, trying to convince myself it had been some quirk of the old apartment building. A loose shingle, maybe. A bird. But deep down, I knew better. I went back to bed, wrapping myself tightly in the blankets like they could shield me from whatever might be out there. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, I forgot about the tapping. Work kept me busy, and by the time I got home, I convinced myself it had been nothing. The day passed without incident. It wasn't until the following night that things took a darker turn. I'd just turned off the lights and settled into bed when the tapping started again. This time, it was louder, more insistent. My stomach clenched as I stared at the window, the blinds still drawn. I thought about checking again, but a heavy sense of dread pinned me to the bed. Something told me that whatever was out there didn't want to be seen. The tapping stopped abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. I lay there for hours, listening for any hint of movement. Eventually, the first rays of dawn seeped through the blinds, and I allowed myself to relax. But when I got up to make coffee, I found something that chilled me to the bone. Scratched into the window's glass were 3 words, jagged and crude. "Let me in." I stumbled back, nearly dropping the coffee mug in my hand. My mind raced, grasping for an explanation. Maybe it was a prank. Some neighbor with a sick sense of humor. But how? My window was 3 stories up. I didn't call the police. What could I tell them? That someone, or something, had etched words into my window while suspended in midair. They'd think I was crazy. Hell, I was starting to think I was crazy. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat on the couch in the living room, armed with a baseball bat and a flashlight, every light in the apartment blazing. Hours passed in tense silence. Just as I began to think the ordeal might be over, the tapping started again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the bedroom window. It was coming from the living room, from the sliding glass door that led to the balcony. I turned, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. The blinds covering the sliding door were slightly ajar, and through the gap, I saw it. A figure, tall and thin, silhouetted against the pale moonlight. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, its long fingers splayed against the glass. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The thing outside tapped on the glass, its head twitching with each movement. Slowly, almost lazily, it raised one finger and began to trace letters on the fogged-up glass. Letmin. I bolted for the bathroom, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My chest heaved as I struggled to catch my breath. My phone was in the living room, but there was no way I was going back out there. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and waited. I must have fallen asleep at some point because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the bathroom window. When I finally worked up the courage to leave the bathroom, the apartment was empty. The sliding glass door was closed and locked, the blinds undisturbed. For a moment, I wondered if I had dreamed the whole thing. But when I stepped onto the balcony, my blood ran cold. There, etched into the outside of the sliding glass door, were the same 3 words. Let me in. I decided to stay with a friend that night. I didn't tell them the real reason, just that my apartment was being fumigated or something. They didn't ask many questions, which was fine by me. I just needed to get out of that place. But the tapping followed me. I was lying on the couch in their living room, trying to fall asleep when it started again. This time it was at the window by the front door. My heart sank as I sat up, every nerve in my body on edge. I didn't move, didn't breathe, and then, from the other side of the room, I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I spun around, my eyes darting to the window behind me. There was nothing there, just darkness. My friend stirred in their bedroom, mumbling something unintelligible before falling silent again. I was alone with it. For the first time, I spoke to her. My voice was barely a whisper, trembling with fear. What do you want? The tapping stopped. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, a voice, low and rasping, answered from the darkness. Let me in. I don't remember screaming, but I must have, because my friend came running out of their room, flipping on every light. I was curled up on the couch, shaking and incoherent. They tried to comfort me, but I could see the fear in their eyes. I'm sure I looked like a lunatic. I didn't stay another night. I couldn't. I checked into a motel on the edge of town, somewhere far from my apartment, far from my friend's house. The first night there was quiet. No tapping, no voices. For the first time in weeks I slept. But it didn't last. The second night I woke to the sound of knocking. Not on the window, but on the door to my room. I sat up, every muscle in my body tensed. The knocking came again, louder this time. I crept to the door, pressing my eye to the peephole. There was no one there, just an empty hallway bathed in flickering fluorescent light. And then from behind me came the tapping. I turned slowly, my heart in my throat. The window was open, the curtains billowing in the night breeze, and there, perched on the sill, was the figure. Its head was tilted at that same unnatural angle, its eyes, if it had eyes, boring into me. It raised one long, spindly finger and pointed at me. Let me in, it rasped. I don't remember what happened after that. When I woke up, it was morning, and I was lying on the motel room floor. The window was closed, the curtains drawn. But etched into the wall above the bed were the same 3 words. Let me in. I've stopped running. It doesn't matter where I go, it always finds me. The tapping, the words, the voice. I've tried everything. Blessings, rituals, even moving halfway across the country. Nothing works. I don't know what it is or what it wants. All I know is that it's always there, just outside, waiting. And every night, the tapping gets a little louder, the voice a little closer. I'm so tired, so scared, but I can't hold out much longer. Maybe if I let it in, it will finally stop. Maybe. Tap, tap, tap.